Joining us now is the host of the show Tipping Point, Liz Wheeler. Liz, you're a blonde woman, I'm pretty sure. So what is your response to this latest piece in the Daily Beast?
First of all, thank you for having me on this show. I mean, and you mentioned the paywall. I think that's a very funny part of the story because you had to send me screenshots of this because I don't pay to see the Daily Beast's garbage that they publish behind that, their little gateway there. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that this is sexist, that it's misogynistic, that it's insulting. We know all of those things. Anybody who reads it knows. What you need me to tell you is why they do this. And they target liberal women tend to target conservative women based only on our appearance. They insult us for the color of our hair, you know, the fact that we wear lipstick on TV, how jarring, or the type of dresses that we wear, professional outfits on air. They do this because they can't meet us in the court of public opinion. They don't know how to rebut or debate our substantive policy positions. And so they resort to this sort of petty, catty, mean girl type mudslinging to try to demean us, I guess, or insult us based only on what we look like.
And I think it's worth pointing out, too, that what we were airing that day, I mean, most of the day was this Senate trial. So, like, you turn us on and, like, you get the basic headlines, you get the top stories of the day. Most of it was the Senate impeachment trial. It's kind of the equivalent of, like, almost watching C-SPAN for a little bit and then writing an article when you don't have anything to write about. Be like, it was boring. Like,
well, yeah, it was boring because impeachment's boring.
I was just going to say that. So, in fact, too, I'm sure that there's been articles that say, oh, how dare Fox News call this a boring process, or One American News call this a boring process. And here they are now kind of admitting to the fact that this is a boring process. But I want to bring this back into what you were saying, too, because as a conservative woman, I know that you do get a lot of these comments yourself. So how would you advise other women who are put in this situation to address these remarks?
Laugh at it mostly. Ignore it when it's particularly mean. Understand why they're making these comments. That's what I always remind myself if there's anything that's particularly nasty. The Daily Beast article is not among those that hurt my feelings, by the way. We were laughing about this last night when we saw it. But no, I mean, you got to know what you believe. You got to know why you believe what you believe. And then when you get attacks like this, you understand that, hey, they don't have any substantive defense of their positions. They don't have any way to rebut what you're saying, so they resort to personal attacks. And by the way, if I may comment on one of her quote-unquote substantive points. She said in this article, the author of this article said that we run Trumpy narratives, I believe was her phraseology. And the example that she gave was what she called a local crime story. This so-called local crime story was a hate crime that we reported on, where a black woman in New York City assaulted 3 Orthodox Jewish adults. And she was saying that that was a Trumpy narrative to cover that. And to be honest, I was aghast when I read that part because I was like, this is the same outlet, the Daily Beast, that ran articles on Jussie Smollett that said, you should believe, I believe Jussie Smollett, here's why, and you should too. They care about fake hate crimes, but when it comes to real hate crimes that only conservative networks are covering, the mainstream media and leftist outlets are ignoring, they call that a Trumpy narrative. If that's a Trumpy narrative, then yeah, count me in on that.
And you know, there's one thing that you brought up that I want to touch on before I let you go, and it's the idea that there's a lack of debate when it comes to these issues.
Yeah.
In fact, you pointed out that you're blocked by this author. So you can't even see her content to begin with. But also, one of the anchors, I don't want to put her in the spotlight or anything because she's taking the high road on all this, but she commented on the post of a picture of what she was wearing that day saying, how is this revealing by any means? It was almost basically a turtleneck. In fact, we showed the picture before. And that message was actually hidden in the replies.
Yeah.
So she didn't want, it's not necessarily that she doesn't want to hear what Greta, oh, I guess I just outed her. Well, I said it earlier, Greta has to say. It's more so the fact she doesn't want her followers to see what Greta has to say.
Well,
and
right.
that's something that you've spoken on too regarding Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example, because you would fact check her leading to your block. So what does this speak about the idea of a lack of debate in this context?
Well, it's the same thing. It's just a different medium of silencing people who you disagree with. So when Greta tweeted what she was wearing, which, by the way, I don't even feel it necessary to defend my colleagues. They're professional, intelligent, hardworking women. Everyone who watches the network knows that. So I don't even feel the need to come to their defense. Their demeanor and their reporting speaks for themselves on that regard. But the left, they try to silence us by insulting us, but then they prove that they want to silence us by actually silencing us so that their followers don't see what we have to say, whether that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blocking me, whether it's the author of this piece hiding Greta's reply, where Greta's like, actually, here's the truth, here are the facts, here's what I was wearing, not inappropriate, perfectly professional. They want to silence us because they're afraid of independent women. They're afraid of conservative-minded women. They're afraid of any woman who doesn't need the crutch of the label feminism, who doesn't celebrate abortion, who doesn't hate men, who doesn't demonize femininity. You know, they're very much threatened by that type of woman, and I think our network showcases a lot of those types of women.
I think you're right. And you know what? It's not the first time that this will happen. It won't be the last. You probably know that better than anyone else. Liz Wheeler, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.